So I read Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant by Ann Tyler. It's about the Tolles family who live in Baltimore, Maryland in the 1930s. Basically, it's about a woman named Pearl who marries her husband Beck, and they have 3 children, Cody, Ezra, and Jenny. But then when the kids are 14, 11, and 9, Beck surprises them by up and leaving them, basically. And that sort of sets into motion this like everlasting theme of like abuse and basically just problems for the kids' childhood as well as like their adult life. So I said like the main like important thing about the author's style is that Tyler chooses to be like a third person omniscient narrator and be able to look into the lives of the 3 children as well as the mom. And I think that's really important for like the novel as a whole, because ultimately like this is a novel about their emotions and their feelings as they're growing older. It's not really about the actions themselves. And so I think if it wasn't a third person omniscient point of view, that Tyler wouldn't be able to like show that and show how the fathers leaving them ultimately really affected the children. So for themes, I said that the main 2 were abandonment and abuse. I said abuse because as they were growing up and the kids still lived at home, their mother, Pearl, would physically and emotionally abuse them. She said things like she called them parasites and wretched, ugly horrors, and she wished they'd all die. Which is obviously abuse, emotional abuse, but at the end of the day, she didn't understand why her children were so separated from her and why they didn't, like, understand why they weren't close to her and didn't want to, like, love her and be one big family. And so I think that also ties into, like, a theme of difference in perspectives, because although the kids feel like their mom is this abusive figure in their lives, she feels like she's the mother figure and she's, like, taken over the role of both mother and father, and she doesn't understand why they won't love her back. So more into that theme of abandonment, Cody, who's the oldest son, was always jealous of Ezra, his younger brother, when they were growing up. And then later on in life, Ezra fell in love with this woman named Ruth, but Cody ended up making her fall in love with him and basically like stealing her from his younger brother. And I think that Cody did that, a lot of the reason Cody did that was because he didn't have like a proper, good, solid marriage to look to. Like he couldn't look to his parents and know what like true love is. And so he had this like warped sense of romance in his head, kind of contributing to that theme of abuse as well. And then Jenny, who's the youngest child and the daughter, she was abused by her mother, and then when she grew up and had kids, she herself abused her daughter, who was named Becky, like her dad's name was Beck. And I thought that was interesting and kind of showed how it was so showing like circle of life, like all things come back to where they started. Like Cody was a victim of like divorce and separation, and then he forced Ezra and Ruth to separate, and then Jenny was a victim of abuse and she became abusive. And so I think that kind of fuels in Tyler's argument about like basically how all things come back to where they started. And so some of my Costas questions were how would Cody's romantic life be different if his parents had not separated? And I kind of talked about this, but I think that a big reason that he stole Ruth from Ezra was that he didn't have like a good marriage to look to. And then one of them was how would the story be different in modern times? And I think that in modern times, Pearl and Beck would be able to have a more healthy separation, because getting separated or divorced is more common nowadays, and so they wouldn't have to hide it and they wouldn't feel ashamed, and she wouldn't have this pent-up anger inside her, which she ultimately like used and exploded onto her children. So they would have had a more healthy like childhood growing up, and they wouldn't have the issues that they did.